Hey guys, how you doing today? It's Simeon here with you. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So I wanted to do this little video about the Tom DeLonge disclosure event, his To the Stars Academy that he officially launched just last October 11th of this year, 2017. So what are my impressions of it? What do I think about it? Well, first of all, I would say I think this is a significant event. I mean, you have witnesses come forward, people that had worked in the government, in one case only one day before and just retired, coming forward and telling you that they've been concerned about these objects, that they've created an unidentified aerial threats program. One individual, Chris Mellon, who just retired also apparently from the Department of Defense a few weeks before this To the Stars Academy event, went into great detail about something that happened in 2004, an event around the USS Nimitz, a $5 billion aircraft carrier where this object apparently maneuvered around the fleet and the ships there. F-18s were scrambled. Of course, they couldn't catch it. It executed a series of tunneling maneuvers and ended up behind the F-18s and all this stuff. I mean, this is really interesting information. It's coming to you from very credible people. This is, in essence, a kind of a government disclosure event. The government didn't actually do this because these are all retired individuals. Hal Puthoff was there. I'm really happy to see that. He's one of the individuals that brought us remote viewing from Stanford Research Institute, as it was called back then in the 1970s, working with super psychics Ingo Swann and Pat Price. So this is a significant event. You don't normally have people like this, of this caliber, get together and tell you that UFOs are real. Now, in my recent book, Black Swan Ghosts, which I know you have enjoyed or will enjoy, I made the claim that the government hasn't said anything about this since 1968, when there was a kind of a one-day congressional hearing about the UFO phenomena, now sometimes called unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, or as they did in this event, they called it AAVs, anomalous aerial vehicles. And but actually, it's not true. There were things since 1968. You might remember the really, I thought, very good video documentary produced by Robert Emenegger and Adam Sandler from 1974 called UFOs, The Contact Has Begun. Now, this was paid for by the Department of Defense and NASA. I mean, it says so in the credits, and Robert Emenegger told us that individuals from one of the Air Force bases, I believe it was Norton in California, approached him and said, we want you to make a series of documentaries, and one of them is about UFOs. We'll give you total access to any information that you want, any resources, and they went into the Pentagon. They have Robert Coleman there, spokesman for the Pentagon, talking there. And so it's a very good documentary, very serious. So this was a disclosure event. Now, of course, what happened right before this film, which you can watch here, it's on YouTube, and I really encourage you to do it. They don't make fun of the issue at all. They basically say it's real and unexplained. And this is produced with U.S. government money. The Air Force, I think, apparently gave Emenegger $250,000, which is not chump change in the early 1970s. A couple days before it's supposed to be released, apparently, Emenegger tells us that they changed their mind. They say, we don't want this released to the public, and you can still see it here on YouTube, but it was never put on TV, which I think is where it was destined for. So that was one event where the government came forward and basically told us this phenomenon is real and we don't understand it. And I thought they did a very good job. It's still a great documentary. It was hosted by Rod Serling, and there was a later version of it in 1978 where they brought in things about cattle mutilations and so forth. Jacques Vallée was in that one. So anyway, that's worth taking a look at. Then in 1988, there was this TV show, UFO Cover-Up Live, and that was also a disclosure event. They mentioned things in there that hadn't been disclosed to the public before. They talked about remote viewing, the parapsychology unit in the Department of Defense. That was a classified program in 1988. It wasn't declassified until 1995. And Area 51 was mentioned. So that was also another disclosure event. And here we are in 2017, and former U.S. government officials, pretty high-ranking officials, come forward and tell us this is something they've been concerned about. So where's the media here? Again, like I mentioned in response to the citizen hearing of 2013 at the press club, National Press Club in Washington, D.C., I mean, again, you had very credible witnesses coming forward there, former heads, high-level people in the FAA and people, missile control launch officers, a number of pilots from the Air Force, things like this, and no media response. I mean, a very weak and just a kind of inadequate media response, negative. And in this case, you have people coming forward who normally, you would listen to and say, wow, that's really interesting. They're telling us, it's real. These phenomena, these objects are real. We don't know what they are. So the To the Stars Academy is multi-leveled approach to try to see if we can develop some of the technology. They want to have an app on your phone where you can report phenomena that you see and so forth. My major concern about this is there's a lot of military intelligence perspective on this. And you may think that that's okay, but we don't live in a society that's run by military intelligence agencies. It's supposed to be under civilian control. I mean, if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail, right? We don't know if these are really threats. We need to see the evidence before you say that they are an unidentified aerial threat, like one of the presenters did at this event, Luis Elizondo. We need to see the evidence. Now, they did say there's no direct evidence, but they're still calling it a threat. So my concern is that, we know from the history of our own country and any country with bureaucracies tend to be self-serving and self-perpetuating. They tend to paint a picture that's going to justify more funding and resources coming into their organization, right? You know this, guys. So I don't just want a military intelligence perspective on the issue. I want people like Hal Puthoff to put their point of view in here too, though he didn't say anything at the event. And others, because the military perspective is going to define things as threats. I mean, that's what creates their resource flow and budget flow into their organizations, right? And they've got things wrong in the past. Just think about the Bay of Pigs, Cuba, Vietnam, the more recent war in Iraq in this century. I mean, those things turned out to be disasters. And it was disasters because these agencies were self-serving, especially the intelligence agencies. And they don't like to admit when they're wrong. So we need to really insist that they tell us the full truth, not just the truth that serves their interests, but the truth that serves all of our interests on a planetary-wide scale, since this is a planetary-wide phenomenon. So it's really a case, again, just like in remote viewing, we want to separate out the signal from the noise. This is a real disclosure event, a real small disclosure event, at least what they did in October. It's just not at my level. It's not something I'm going to be participating in because I don't believe that the extraterrestrial phenomenon, if that's what it is, it could be coming from the Earth parallel realities. But whatever it is, I'm not convinced it's a threat. I know some of it, people have negative experiences sometimes, but half of the people who've been involved with these sorts of experiences report very positive experiences. In Black Swan Ghosts, I mentioned a whole range of experiences that people have, including missing time. Now, is this negative or positive? It's neither. It's really sort of what you make of it. So I'm a little concerned. I guess you can kind of figure it out that this has kind of a negative slant on it. I know Tom DeLonge has made statements that I've heard him make on Coast to Coast AM radio, where he says that he thinks these ETs are demonic and so forth. Yeah, so the real thing is here, we need to make sure that this disclosure of whatever this phenomena turns out to be, that it's done in an open way, that it's done in a manner that follows the way we look at evidence, the way we judge any sort of topic that initially seems strange, that we later come to understand is something that is what the universe is made of, and we may not understand it at the time. I mean, in the past, vacuum spaces were considered supernatural because Aristotle had said that there was no such thing as vacuums, that it was unnatural. So vacuums were considered supernatural, as were magnets, because people didn't understand how those work. And even in more modern times, look at meteorites. At one time, English and French scientists in the 18th century didn't believe that rocks could fall from the sky. They didn't think anything happened beyond the Earth. That was the idea that was inherited all the way back to Aristotle, that there's nothing that goes on beyond the distance of the moon. So therefore, there are no stones in the sky. And meteorites were considered just laughable. They thought that they must have originated from lightning hitting rocks here on the ground, or perhaps they were called thunderstones. Maybe they came out of volcanoes. And meteorites were confiscated and thrown away. So look how far our knowledge has changed just of something as simply extraterrestrial as meteorites. So the main point here is we don't want to draw premature conclusions before we've seen all the evidence and we can make our mind up whether the ETs are good or bad or indifferent or whatever they are. I'm sure it's like on Earth. You know, there's good folks, there's bad folks, and there's a lot of people in between. But just to kind of use a very broad brush to label it as something that's hostile, that's threatening, I mean, that's a type of xenophobia. And it's easy when you're confronted with something new and something strange and something kind of alien, you know, that you feel afraid of it. But just because you're afraid of it or you don't understand it doesn't mean it's inherently bad, it's inherently evil, or that it's out to get you. I mean, come on, let's be real about this. I don't think anyone really understands the ET topic yet. It's extremely strange and weird. Honestly, it could go beyond even what we're capable of understanding, but we have to start somewhere. And we've done it in the past with other scientific mysteries that we later have come to understand. I mean, right now people are puzzled by things like superconductivity, which could increase efficiency of energy flow, electricity. There's dark matter, dark energy. We don't understand that. It doesn't mean we should be afraid of it. It just means we need to apply the same techniques and tools we use to understand anything and slowly put the evidence together with our observations, with theories and ideas. You know how it works. So that's what I'm suggesting we do with this topic too, and that we all participate, we all get involved, but we don't necessarily frame it from a very limited view from the get-go, because that is just going to produce a limited outcome in the long run. That's not what we want. So anyway, I think an excellent person to watch some of his YouTube videos is Grant Cameron. He's a historian of UFOs from Canada. I've talked to Grant many times. He's a great guy, and he really knows the history of this phenomena, at least how our society has dealt with it, especially presidents. And he's put together a couple of videos, which I suggest you watch, about the To the Stars Academy, who these individuals are that Tom DeLonge mentions and introduces us to in the presentation, what they've said about the phenomenon in the past, what they're saying about it now, their levels of credibility and so forth. It's really excellent. It's worth your time watching, so take a look. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Appreciate you being on my channel. If you like this sort of thing, please subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care for now, and bye.